So, a few people have been asking me lately, where's the Destiny content? Why don't you make videos or montages on the game anymore? Do you even still play the game or even like it? Well, I'm here to sort of answer all those questions while simultaneously giving my thoughts on the state of the game now. Because, yeah, Destiny is a game I've been extremely involved with in the past. I actively made excuses to revisit it with all sorts of arbitrary videos, even when I didn't really have a lot of ideas for content. I never wanted to be one of those channels that reviews every weapon and goes over the ins and outs of each piece of content, because frankly that would have been a full-time job in and of itself. But that aside, I absolutely adore, or at least adored, the game for a very long time. To start, yes, I do still play Destiny. In fact, I still put in around 4 to 6, probably more towards 6 hours a week, almost every single week. While not near as much as I played about a year ago, it's still one of my most actively played games. That said, I do it almost strictly for the sake of leisure. Most of the time I'm actually setting my status to offline so I can just jump on, do the daily and weekly bounties and quests, shoot some aliens and call it quits. That's all there is to it. I still firmly believe Destiny has the best and most satisfying feel to its shooting mechanics of any shooter I've ever played. If I just want to relax and shoot things, this is the game of choice 10 times out of 10. That said, I'm not involved in any way. I'm playing the game, but only to play it. Because if I were to do anything more than that, I would be miserable. Frankly, I think Destiny is a horrendous game in its current state. Worse than even the first year of Destiny at its driest period prior to the launch of House of Wolves, and far worse than the Taken King was just prior to the April update. Sure, there are more things to do. Hell, most of my time spent in the game nowadays is doing the weekly patrol quests and daily public events for engrams, which, as you may know, those were both introduced in the Rise of Iron expansion. But the problem is that everything else is exasperating, and almost all of it has to do with one major flaw: the developer, Bungie. As you may also know, I've been putting a lot of time into Overwatch, which I have to say has been a far more enjoyable experience than Destiny, despite my huge preference of PvE content over PvP content in really any game I've ever played. And there's a huge reason why. And that's that Bungie has failed to understand since the launch of its game that it needs variety and updates. Unless you're dropping content on a monthly basis, it's almost always going to get incredibly stale extremely fast for almost any person who puts more than a few hours into the game each week. That's just how it is. People want updates. People want new things. They want change. I'm not just asking for new activities to do. There needs to be some fluctuation. While Destiny does have a lot of content packed into its game, which, when I look at it, would totally overwhelm any new player, so little of it is relevant. So little of it is worth the trouble. So little of it is functional, and almost never does it evolve. When was the last balance patch for the game? Rise of Iron launch? Earlier than that? I don't know. I don't care. All I know is that it's been so long it feels like the game has been this bad for an eternity. There is no variety. The meta does not shift. The best weapons always remain the best weapons, and I can't help but constantly feel that Bungie does not give a damn about this game anymore. They are so focused on pushing to get Destiny 2 completed for next fall or whenever that's coming out, that they have left the first game with far too many people hanging on the rope. They say they're still doing stuff, but the fact that the game has been run by an indie-sized team out of the whopping, 600 staff at Bungie shows just how much they care about the game, which is not at all. Coming from other games where the meta changes on an almost monthly basis, if not faster. Coming from a genre that prides itself on evolution. Yet I've seen offline, single-player focused games that change more. I'm looking at you, Uncharted 4. It's just bad. And it doesn't help that the connections are so abysmal. Not just in PvP, but even in simple PvE content such as strikes. I stopped playing them because it's a 50-50 chance that none of the PvE enemies will even move or respond to your bullets because someone in your fire team is running around with a connection that isn't even within 5 time zones of your own, and the game is still on peer-to-peer connections. Who does that these days? And this is to say nothing of the PvP. The Crucible is horrible. Not only is it hard to find enjoyment from, it is an actual case study in bad game design and management. The connections are horrible. The meta is unshifting. The matchmaking is some of the worst I've ever seen, and I'm going to go on a little side tangent and talk about that for a second. Skill-based matchmaking has been a hot topic since it was first implemented about a year ago, almost exactly from now, and it's only gotten worse. Regardless of prioritizing connections, which they've said they've done so many times, the mere implementation of it is completely baffling. I'm okay at the Crucible, sure. In the Taken King, I was even ranked in the top 10 to 20%, I would say more towards 20% of active players. Yet across my accounts, it's a completely different story on a per character basis for some reason. On one character, nothing but pub stomps, mostly because it's a relatively new account, but I can still breeze through every match with no issue even now. On another character, it's sort of at my skill level, or at least was, but I stopped playing for a few months, and when I came back, yeah, I don't really stand much of a chance. I mean, it doesn't change. It doesn't take into consideration you haven't played the game in a while. And I have to endure it every time because the ceiling doesn't drop. No matter how many times I lose, the ceiling doesn't drop. It only increases. And my third character? Forget it. I can't even touch PvP lest I be put against an entire team of professional level. And when I say professional level, I mean Bomb Squad Kittens. I mean math class. And math class isn't even professional level, but I mean, that's like the worst of my opponents. It is the literal best 2 to 3 KD players when I have never broken 1.5, if even like gotten close to that. And they take me down before I even make it 5 steps on every spawn. And that was back when I was much better at the game. Of course, this is all a personal problem, and sure, that's my deal. Whatever, I don't expect sympathy there. I'm just explaining what the issue is. I'm not the only one this has happened to. It happens to everybody. And skill is an issue. You can't have an enjoyable experience if all you ever get put up against are people better than you. And of course, there are people on their skill level, but guess what? You have to constantly be playing the game. It is required of you to put in every single possible hour that you have to stay good at the game, lest you be left in the dust. It's really, really poorly implemented. It doesn't take into consideration how you played prior. It doesn't take into consideration how you've played even the last couple weeks or even months. It just takes into consideration your overall performance, and until you have somehow found a way by playing a million games and losing every single one of them to finally drop to a skill level that's actually relative to what you're actually at. And I'd honestly be willing to get better at the game, again, if it wasn't totally non-functional, totally imbalanced, completely unfun, and I didn't see one of these assholes in every single match. No, I'm not even exaggerating. Destiny is bad right now. Really, really bad. For a long time, I advocated and convinced many a person to play this game. I genuinely enjoyed everything about it. Heck, there's still a lot I do enjoy about it, even without many friends to help me through the game's most core activities. Hell, I didn't even get to experience the first 2 raids till well after they were relevant, and to this day, I still haven't played King's Fall or Wrath of the Machine. Yet I still loved it, and that's the best content in the game I'm missing out on. Now, I can't help but just say to anyone who wants to pick this game up, at the very best, there's a lot to do. At the very worst, once you've done all the PvE stuff, just sell this game and never touch it again. It isn't worth it. I said this once and I'll say it again. Destiny is the worst game I've ever truly loved. And I mean loved. Like, I'm talking top 20 favorite games I've ever played. And I've played a lot of video games. And out of all those, it's the hardest to recommend to anyone else. But there isn't much left to rationalize. And I think now that Bungie stopped giving a damn, I finally started doing the same. See you all in the next one.